Close, Mesquite, so. Yeah. Right? Yeah. 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 Perfect. All right. Yeah.
I got to have a quorum,
Yeah.
or it's going to be a long night. So if there's any questions, it'll be a short meeting, okay? If Diane does not show. I understand. It'd feel better if she was here now instead of in 3 minutes. There she is. Can I share with you the significance of you being here? If you didn't
He was
show,
starting to sweat.
we don't have a quorum. We don't have a quorum. We can't do anything.
Well, that's exciting.
Not even swear anybody in.
Did you get your hair cut? No.
Well, it just looks,
Just all bunched
it looks
up
shorter.
with my jacket.
So Diane, I didn't mean to cut you off so fast yesterday. I was at my printer's doing art. And he's always like, gets annoyed if somebody calls,
I
but
can- I
I
can
didn't mean to
believe
cut you off. But
Hey, Ann, you feel like doing a pledge?
I appreciate you putting it on there. Thank you.
moment of silence and the pledge, right? Yeah.
How was your Christmas? They should have sent some kids over to entertain you. It was different going from having 4 at home to only having 2 at home. Wow. Will you pass that over to the mayor? You and I will have to talk about that, Mayor. Kind of interesting.
Wow. It's pretty bold statements.
Yeah. I was not aware of anything.
Okay, yeah. You want to keep it and then you
Yeah,
just talk about it?
we'll address it. I want you involved with it.
Yeah, we can do that. I think we're close enough. Welcome. I think I have a pretty good idea why we're here tonight, and I bet you do too. But before we jump into that, I think we have a couple of things we just want to need to do, and we ought to make sure those things happen. First thing is I want to recognize and welcome that we have Councilmember Paul, Councilmember Wilson, and Councilmember Jackson with us tonight. Obviously, we're going to swear in a couple of new council members tonight. And the fact that all 3 of the council showed up today allows us to do that tonight. So that's going to be a good day. We've asked Councilmember Jackson if she will lead us in a moment of silence and a pledge of allegiance.
Can you please join us in a moment of silence? Will you please stand for the pledge? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, council, thank you. Thank you, Ann. We do have a consent item, which is the approval of the December 7th, 2021 Roy City Council meeting minutes. Do we have any comments or questions about those minutes?
A few changes which I've already sent to Brittany.
Okay. And Brittany, you got those changes?
Very well, okay. All right, okay.
Perfect. Okay. Any other comments, questions? No. Do I have a motion then to approve the consent items?
We'll move
And
With the
thank you.
changes.
with the changes.
I'll
With the
second it.
changes. Thank you.
Yeah.
Do I have a second?
I will second it.
Thanks, Diane. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, minutes are approved based on the changes that were submitted. Thank you. This is public comment period. Let me make sure we understand the difference. There's a public hearing that will address the budget. There's a public comment period will address everything. So if you have something you'd like to share, maybe the snow plowing, how much you like the lights, anything you feel that you'd like to share in public comment period, please step up to the mic. All we need is your name and address. Okay, seeing none, we'll go ahead and drop out of our public comment period. We do have a couple of action items, fact 3 to be specific, we want to work through. First is the appointment of the mayor and 2 new city council members. So we'd like to do that first. And Brittany, this is yours.
We'll do yours first. Are you ready?
That's right. That's good.
Right hand for me. And we'll start. I, and then start. I,
I, Robert Danboy,
having been elected
elected
or appointed to the office of,
office of mayor,
do solemnly swear or affirm
solemnly swear and affirm
that I will support,
that I will support
obey, and defend
and defend
the Constitution of the United States
of the United
and the
States
Constitution of the state, and that I will discharge the duties of my office
and will discharge the duties of my office.
with fidelity.
Appreciate that. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate that.
Of course.
Who's next?
Let's do Randy next.
Okay, Randy.
So we'll start with I and then Stephen. I,
Randy Scadden,
having been elected or appointed
to
the office of
the office of
council member,
council member,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
or affirm
that I will support,
obey,
obey,
and defend the Constitution
and defend the Constitution
of the United States
of the United States
and the Constitution
and the Constitution
of the state of Utah,
of the state of Utah,
and that I will discharge
and that I will discharge
the duties of my office
the duties of my office
with fidelity.
with fidelity.
Congratulations.
You sit next to your Paul.
Welcome. Welcome to the jungle. I think there's a song about that.
I, Sophia Lynn Paul,
Have been elected or appointed
have been elected or appointed
to the office of,
to the office of city council member,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
or affirm
that I will support,
obey,
obey,
and defend
and defend
the Constitution
Let me just make a comment if I can. This is a pretty interesting and great day. I'm not aware in Roy history where both a husband and wife are in fact elected to the council. I know it happened in a little town, I believe, in Harrisville a few years back, where a husband and wife are actually on the council, but I think this is the first for Roy City. And that's a pretty exciting day. Remember that, okay? We're glad to have you, okay? You guys will do great. Thank you. Okay, with that, by the way, I think it might be appropriate if you kind of introduce, Randy, please introduce who you have from the family here. If they would just raise their hands so we can see who they are.
Sure, we'll go right to left. I've got my youngest daughter, Alyssa, my wife, Ashlyn, my aunt, Lisa, my second to youngest sibling, Keaton Skadden, my father, Bob Skadden, and my mother, Tracy Skadden.
Perfect. Okay, well, welcome. Congratulations, a big day for the Skadden family, obviously. Perfect. And Sophie, would you mind introducing your family that's here?
Yeah, I have my oldest daughter, Kendra, and then my next daughter, Kylie, and her husband, Cam, and Trayden and Trevin, my two little cabooses, and my two super sweet friends, Heidi and Sudan.
Okay.
Thank you for your support. Thank you.
Yeah, perfect.
So glad they're here.
Welcome. Okay, again, a great day in the Paul family. Historical. Okay, with that then, Council, thank you. Appreciate you running for election and being elected and helping us in terms of how we navigate the future of Roy City. I do have one other action item, which is the approval of the council member committees and liaison assignments. You've had a chance, I assume, to look at those. They're in your packet. Do you have any questions or comments before I ask then for approval of that liaison list? Everybody okay? Okay. With that then, do I have a motion then to approve those assignments to those committees?
So moved.
Okay, Diane?
Second.
Okay, Joe? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Perfect, it's approved. Okay, here's how I'd like to handle the public hearing portion, which is going to talk about fiscal year budget. I'd like to have Matt, if you don't mind, or Amber, I'll leave it up to your discretion, who wants to just basically do the introduction so that everybody in the room will understand a little bit. And then more importantly, if we can, I need to open up for public hearing, Council. I'll go for a vote. Then we'll allow anybody who wants to talk about the public hearing to talk about it. And then we'll close the hearing, and then we can get into your questions, your comments, your thoughts before we go to a vote. So, Amber, it sounds like you're going to talk this, so please open us up, okay?
Okay, good evening. Can you hear me okay? Is that good? Okay. All right, Mayor and Council, we are here tonight to present Resolution 22-1 for your consideration to amend the fiscal year 2022 budget based on the information you received in your council packets. This proposed resolution will increase the previously approved fiscal year 2022 budget by $5,369,410. The budget adjustments have been separated into two separate sections to aid in your discussions tonight. The first section details budget adjustments related to the recently conducted salary survey. Over the past few months, staff has spent many hours comparing job positions in the police, fire, and administration departments. Job descriptions were evaluated and compared to neighboring cities, including Bountiful, Centerville, Clearfield, Clinton, Kaysville, Layton, North Ogden, Pleasant View, Riverdale, South Ogden, and Syracuse. Data was then evaluated to ensure we were comparing similar job duties and not just job titles. We then calculated the average wage for each position, and this is the amount we are proposing on the new pay scales. This is the same process used for previous salary survey that was implemented July 1st, 2021 for Public Works and Parks and Recreation employees. We are proposing to adopt the new wage scales and retro pay back to July 1st, 2021. Salary surveys are a long process, and retroing the pay back is a way to allow staff to systematically go through the process and provide you with quality results without hurrying through the process. It will also make all city departments equal since the last salary survey was adopted on July 1st. This will have a budget impact to wages and benefits in the general fund of $1,552,374. $935 $1,642,000 is applicable to the police department, $413,901 to the fire department, and $202,831 to the administration departments. We have one administration employee in the utility enterprise fund that would increase wages and benefits in that fund by $2,328. We have 2 employees in the information technology fund, and this would increase wages and benefits in that fund by $10,596. If you choose to adopt the new pay scales effective January 1st, 2022, then the cost would be approximately half of those previously stated amounts. The second section of budget adjustments includes the following. We have received $2.3 million in ARPA funds from the state of Utah that will be set aside for future infrastructure projects. This amount will need to be spent by December of 2024. We propose a transfer of $75,000 to the Information Technology Fund to pay for a new USB outage/WatchGuard server. This will provide a full backup battery system for the current servers and provides a new system with unlimited storage for the body cameras used by the police department. This amount would come from fund balance. The fire department has had a few fee changes that have resulted in increased revenues. We are proposing to increase revenues of $200,000 in ambulance fees and $55,000 in transfer revenue. They would like to add 2 new battalion chief positions to their staff so that there will be a battalion chief on each shift. The new positions will increase wages and benefits by $100,000 for the remainder of this fiscal year. And the rest of the increased revenue will be transferred to the Capital Projects Fund to pay for their capital requests. The police department would like to add an evidence clerk to their staff. This is a position that they have previously had in the past and has been left vacant because of budget constraints and is currently being fulfilled by an officer. This request will allow us to place the officer back in an investigative role and hire a civilian who can do the same work at nearly half the cost of the sworn officer. $21,000 is the cost of wages and benefits to fill this position for the remainder of the fiscal year. The police department is also requesting $5,000 to promote 1 officer to administrative sergeant. This position also existed in the past and has been vacant. The administrative sergeant position provides an opportunity for sergeants to get administrative experience that they wouldn't get otherwise in a patrol or investigative role. This experience is necessary for those who seek to advance to captain as those positions become available. These amounts would come from fund balance. In the Capital Projects Fund, we're proposing to rebudget 2 items that were in last year's budget, but were not completed by the end of the fiscal year. $10,000 is for a new front counter in the Justice Court, and $47,650 is to finish the pole barn at the recreation building that they use for storage. $155,000 that will be transferred from the general fund from the increased ambulance revenue will be used for capital items in the fire department. $110,000 would be used to purchase 2 new vehicles as part of their regular rotation. One of these vehicles will be used for the new battalion chief on shift, and the other would be sold. They would also use $45,000 to remodel Station 32. The remodel would make an office, bunk room, and bathroom for the new battalion chiefs. We are also proposing $1.3 million for a new ladder truck. It will take approximately 18 months to receive the truck from when we order it. Council approval now will allow staff to proceed with the purchase process. This would come from fund balance previously set aside for fire equipment. As previously mentioned, we would propose $75,000 for the new UPS outage server in the Information Technology Fund. The impact to this fund would be to increase in charges from the general fund and an increase in expenditures. We recommend that you receive public input and then consider approval of Resolution 22-1. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Amber. Okay. Before we get any questions or comments, I'd like to open up for public hearing. So with that then, council, I need a motion to go into a public hearing to address the Resolution 22-1. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Okay, Joe?
Second it.
I need a second. Ann? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, we're now in a public hearing. If you have something you'd like to share with us relative to this budget adjustment, then please walk up to the mic, give us your name and your address. Anybody like to share anything?
Good evening, Council. My name is Leon Wilson. I live at 4302 South, 2675 West. So we're looking at a $5 million budget increase. That's a pretty hefty chunk of change. My comment is we're pushing salaries up 27% for the fire. It's a supply and demand issue, and everybody's chasing the talent. I can appreciate that. But I also appreciate the situation that puts you in and the general feel for citizens of Roy that we're now have to swallow pretty hard for this pay increase and possibly a retro of $750,000 going back 6 months. My recommendation is that this city council makes a concerted effort for a graduated review of this kind of an issue, COLA perhaps. If we know that these things are going to continue to happen, as they will, inflation, et cetera, it makes more sense that we're able to have something to rely upon, to count on, both from the employees' state point of view and also from the citizens. So I strongly recommend that in the future that we adopt a COLA process to look at this and make it a lot more palatable for everybody involved. Thank you very much, Council.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate the input. Okay. Anybody else would like to share a thought? Kevin, name and address, please.
Yes, I'm Kevin Homer. I live at 5398 South, 4000 West here in Roy. I'll try to go as quickly as possible. I have a list. There's a portion of this money that was talked about using as back pay or compensation for most of the employees, most of the staff. What I would encourage you to do is look at that more as a retention bonus. I think we talked about $3,000 was the amount. There may be some concern if that bonus is given without some strings tied to that. I would prefer that it be something that the employees, so that when they get that compensation, they don't immediately leave and just go somewhere else and get a job somewhere. We want to look at this as something, if you stay here with us for a while, if there's retention, let's make sure that that's one of the conditions for spending that money on the people. If they leave early, they may have to give some of it back. There's the $75,000. I know this was mentioned for the outage and WatchGuard server that has to do both with UPS, uninterruptible power supply, which is a good thing, but even more so has to do with network monitoring that is a part of that package, which again is a good thing to have for all the computers and network systems here at the city, but also for unlimited backup of the body cam images from the police department. I think that is a good thing. $75,000 is a little bit high if it was just for network monitoring, but since it's for all of those other things, I think that's probably a good expenditure. I also support the increases for all the emergency services, both police and fire, across the board. It's pretty high, but we need to retain those people as best we can. And then also about the evidence clerk, it's been discussed here before. Yeah, it's bringing somebody else in, but I think that there's a definite need for it, and I would support having that here in Roy City as well. Let's use a little bit of caution in making these long-term financial decisions. I know, everybody's been really happy. We had this windfall of $1.2 million in sales tax for online sales because everybody was trapped at home last year. We made a whole lot of online purchases, which helped the revenue here in the city, but that's one data point for 1 year. We don't know what's going to happen next year or the year after. For myself, I plan on continuing to spend a lot of money online, which helps here, but we don't know. Let's be very cautious about making long-term financial decisions just based on 1 year when we got some really good online sales tax. Let's just be cautious. besides having this windfall revenue, that's a lot of money to increase the city budget, 5.2 million. We got to cut back in other places. We can't just continue increasing what we do. There are areas when we can cut back. We should look at those. I'll talk about those in the future. I've poked at you guys a little bit about it already, but we'll have some more discussions about how to reduce those expenses. So, thank you.
Kevin, thank you.
You, Kevin.
Okay. Anybody else like to share? Steve? Are we speaking as a planner or are we speaking as an employee? Go ahead.
One and the same. Good evening, council members. First, I'd like to thank you for what you do. It's not easy to be where you are and facing the things you do. Thank you for looking into and discussing this issue tonight. I've heard several times from this body over the years how important employees are, and you look for ways to keep this important asset. Thank you for your support and trust in us as employees to conduct the day-to-day aspects of the city. As an FYI, we haven't received COLA increases since 2014. So if you think 3% over the past 7 years, that's 21% you've saved over 7 years of not giving COLA increases. We were promised to have salaries looked at every 3 years. Police and fire, that has come up several times from administrative, Parks and Rec, and Public Works. It didn't happen until this year. So as we kind of look at that, just know that there are others beyond the fire and police who are looking for jobs, who are no longer here because of that. Thank you for, again, members of the council, for everything you do and for discussing this tonight.
Steve, would you give us a name and address?
Steve Parkinson, 5051 South, 1900 West.
Thank you, Steve.
Thank you.
Hello, council, mayor. My name is Aaron Nelson. I also live with Steve at 5051 South, 1900 West. Got a couple things I want to address tonight. If I'm not making eye contact, it's because I'm reading off my paper. That way I can stay on topic and focused. So for those of you who don't know me on the council, my name's Aaron Nelson. I've been with Roy City for the past 2 years and in law enforcement for the past 6. I'm currently assigned as the child crimes detective. I thank you for allowing us to comment on this proposed raise. Prior to coming to Roy Police Department, I often heard of the great officers and administration that were here. Getting to work with them on multiple occasions as a Weber County Sheriff's Deputy covering our neighboring cities of West Haven and Hooper. I've always been impressed by the professionalism and manner in which Roy officers have presented themselves. This drew me to Roy the first of 2020. Since I have worked here, I have been privileged to get to know each employee of the Roy Police Department. I have learned about their lives, their families, and been able to grow close to them. I came to a fork in the road recently where I have chosen to leave Roy Police Department to pursue a career I've long sought after. Nonetheless, this raise is still important to me for the fact that it affects my colleagues, my brothers, whom I've endured much with. While the raise does not dictate my future, I know it dictates theirs. Many times I've seen our officers here at Roy sought after by other local agencies, and rightfully so due to their amazing talents and abilities. Many of you on the council attended our 2021 awards banquet where you saw every officer within our department awarded for at least one, if not more, actions that reflect proudly on our police department and our city values. Yes, there was a lot of awards given that night, and every award was rightfully given, but that was only a fraction of the outstanding and heroic actions officers from Roy City took throughout the year. Though it is comforting knowing that our department recognizes our outstanding work our officers do, the community we serve feels the same. We saw our community rally around us on a regular basis throughout 2020 and 2021. From responding to one of our brothers killed in the line of duty in Ogden, the civil unrest in Salt Lake City, and especially close to home when 3 of our officers were shot at and our K-9 officer Mick shot in the line of duty. While these are major events, we have just as equally major things happen on a regular basis within the city that people don't know about. We've had officers pulling citizens from burning buildings, performing life-saving measures on victims of shootings, stabbings, and falling victim to their own habits or health. And let's not forget the multitude of car accidents that happen. All of these things amongst the many others we respond to, take a toll on officers of this city. That itself is a known sacrifice we are and will continue to be willing to make. From physical to psychological, emotional, and your relationship with your spouse and children will suffer. But lastly, financially. This is a noble profession and not one willing or not many are partake of due to obvious reasons. But for those who have partaken, wondering if they can make ends meet and adequately provide for themselves and their families should not be one of those stressors. I do not have a spouse or children. As I previously mentioned, this raise will not affect me personally, but it will affect those I care about deeply. These are people that started as colleagues that turned into family for me. I know them personally, and I know their families personally. These are good people who step up to the plate regularly and willingly do what it takes to keep the community of Roy City safe. Their families sacrifice just as much as the officers with sending them to work each and every day. This is a place we call home. Leaving Roy was one of the toughest decisions I had to make, but I worked hard for my new career. These men and women of Roy Police Department, they're what makes it hard to leave. You can go to any other agency in Weber County and get a better paycheck, a police car, and a job at this point due to the high demand for officers. But again, these officers and support staff here at Roy Police Department, they are what make our department a big family. Those outside of our career will not fully understand the bond we have after all we've been through together. Spouses can get a glimpse of it more so than the layperson, but nothing will break our bond. Many of us currently reside within Roy City. We contribute to the city in many ways, especially in utilizing the different amenities that the city provides. We love Roy deeply as it has provided us a multitude of opportunities and experiences. There's a culture here. People are personable, approachable, and despite the department, everyone cares about this city. We at the police department get to work with many departments within the city, especially our cohorts at the fire department. Another amazing group of individuals who sacrifice just as much as the police department for the city. Our different departments heads here at Roy provide us with opportunities to voice our concerns such as this and equally fight for their employees to be taken care of, as Chief Gwynn has done for us. As you contemplate this proposed raise, know one thing. These officers you see at Roy Police Department have not once wavered in their commitment to the community, the members, and Roy City. Day in and day out, they answer the call, no matter how minuscule or severe it is. These men and women are your defense against the evil and vile acts which occur within our city limits. Our city isn't perfect by any means, but it is home for us. We hear it time and time again that money isn't everything, and it's not. That's why our officers have stayed here and waited patiently for this moment when they could have left to neighboring agencies for significant raises. Money may not be everything, but it is comforting knowing that we can provide for our families, have a roof over our heads. When we are eligible to retire at 20, 25 years, depending on which tier public safety retirement system you're in, it is safety and security for our future. Thank you again for reviewing this proposed raise and giving us this opportunity.
Okay. Hey, thank you. Great comments. Anybody else would like to share a thought? Name and address.
My name is Jordan Schmidt. I live at 5253 South, 2675 West. Sorry, not great at public speaking, so pardon the nerves. Mayor, City Council members, and City Manager Andrews, thank you for the opportunity to speak to you tonight, not only as an employee, but also as a citizen. I understand that tonight you are faced with a decision that is very significant and not a light choice to make. You have been given a lot of information and statistics to review in order to make an informed decision. I, as well as many others, have had the opportunity to work closely with Chief Gwynn in researching and pulling statistics to assist him with his proposal on wage and retention fixes, and I know there are multiple factors that have been considered when coming up with the resolution that you will be discussing tonight. However, there are a number of factors that cannot be quantified or put into a graph or spreadsheet. How do we put a statistic to the morale of an agency and the loyalty of its employees? How do we quantify the skills, knowledge, and experience of dedicated employees? How do we assign a number value to the effect this will have on the families of those employees who have dedicated their time and careers to Roy City? I understand that the large price tag on the resolution has been proposed is a significant sum of money, but I also know that there are large and far-reaching costs that are not monetary that may potentially affect the city and the level of services that are provided to its residents if the city does not take adequate steps to compensate its employees that give so much of themselves. As I have had the opportunity to work with other agencies, I have heard over and over that the reputation of the Roy City Police Department is one of the best in Weber County. And as I have had the great pleasure of working with our officers, I understand completely how that reputation was obtained. Their level of commitment to their profession as well as the citizens that they serve is unmatched. There is also an undeniable atmosphere of family within our department that is not found in many other agencies. And my biggest fear is that we will lose those things if this resolution is not passed. I have spoken with many of these officers, and I know that the last thing that they want to do is make the difficult decision to leave their work family for better compensation. But we have gotten to the point where many skilled and talented officers will be forced to make that decision in order to better provide for their own families. For me personally, I do not stand to gain monetarily if the resolution passes tonight, but that doesn't mean that I will not benefit from it. Myself, as well as the rest of the city employees and the residents of Roy City, will benefit from the retention of many hardworking, skilled, and loyal employees. And that is not something that you or I can put a number to. I hope that you consider those factors as you make your decision tonight. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Okay. Great comments. And you did good. Thank you. Anybody else like to share? Name and address.
Stuart Hackworth, 5561 South, 4100 West. I'm honored to have the opportunity to speak to some people I call friends, and to speak in front of some people I really like to call family. I know all of you very well, and I've been with this city for almost 26 years now. Lived in the city. I consider myself a Royan. Is that a name? I retired in 2015, was gone for my year. I thought I was going to go continue teaching, and got a call from, I think, then Lieutenant Hammond, and said, hey, they're doing laterals if you want to come back. I love this job. I seriously, I love this city. It's home. We've had a history of kind of falling behind when it comes to taking care of our employees. And I call them our employees because I'm a citizen of Roy and I consider them our employees. The last time we added a new position, I believe 5600 overpass wasn't here. We didn't have the internet. Winco wasn't here. The intersection at 3500 West, 5600 South was a T intersection with no stoplight. Weiniger's wasn't there. I Omega occupied. I kind of, you can see where I'm going. That's the last time we added a position. I think we've added a few more people, not only residents, but those that drive to Hill Air Force Base, this beautiful new business complex we've got now, with the same amount of people doing that job. I came back again because this is home. I would hate to see my family, anybody in my family, leave because of a better opportunity, if you will, meaning better being able to take care of their family, because I've seen that in the past. Trust me, I get emails from my friend at Salt Lake. They're like, come over right now. $11 more an hour to start, shift differential. There's a lot of people here that are here because they care about the city and they care about the citizens of this city. While we're standing here tonight, there was a unfortunate incident just a couple blocks outside of our city in which an officer had to use deadly force. Those are the kind of things that we're facing. Things have changed. And retention and actually recruitment is so important. And this very difficult decision, I guess, that you're going to have to make tonight has far-reaching, it reaches farther than just the money. It reaches to your citizens that we're here to serve and that you're here to serve. Because, you know, if you don't have your reliable people, the fire and the police, to make those critical decisions, the experience, I believe last year, 230 years, Lieutenant or Captain Hammond, of experience. I believe we calculated the amount of retirements, and there are some that are like, I'm actually thinking about getting back in the system. If I'm going to say when this goes through, that's a little positive. I'm influenced there. There's some 200. I believe it was 250 years of experience we lost in retirements or people leaving for other agencies in the last. I believe it was the last year. When you talk about cop shop, law enforcement, that ability to make those split-second decisions that impact other people's lives, you can't put a number on that. That comes from experience. And I'm going to end my little speech here by saying thank you all so very much for your support, and congratulations, Sophie and Randy. So, thank you.
Thank you. Great comments. Okay, anybody else like to share? Thank you. Name and address.
We've had everybody else. Robert Percival, 5511 South, 2800 West. I'm also here representing the local union of the fire department. These guys have said it, my brothers that come up here, the police and fire brother, they're a brotherhood. We know that. My comments are going to be short because I agree with everything they've said. Roy City is home. I've been with Roy City for 25 years in February. I've stayed here through thick and thin. We've had rough times, we've had good times, but this is the place I've always wanted to be. Like they said, we've had opportunities to go other places. Most of us have a lot to go, some don't. We stay here because we love this city. We want the city to be the best it can be. But we're losing a lot of people right now, and we're losing experience. And the importance behind that experience, anybody can do this job day to day, you know, go to the fire station, wash the trucks, drive around and give tickets in the police car. They can do that. But like Officer Hackworth said, it's when the split-second decisions need to be made that we need the experience here. We need to have the people that have that experience, people that have the knowledge to pass on what in the fire service we call institutional knowledge. We need to keep people here, pay them what they're worth. It might be a cliche, but I always say in the fire department, we're not paid for what we do. We are paid for what we are willing to do. And as council people, you hear some of the stories. I've talked with many of you about different things that have happened in the city. And I know it's a tough decision, but I think as a citizen and as a local union president that you guys will make the right decision. You'll be able to keep the experience here, keep our people here, keep the good people of Roy, and make Roy the best that it can be. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Great comments. Anybody else would like to share a thought with us? Name and address. Thank you.
Hey, Mayor and Council. My name is Daryl Illam. I'm 5460 South, 2700 West. I work for Stormwater. I've been with Roy City for 26 years. I come from a long line of family here at Roy City. My father-in-law was a fire chief at Roy. My dad was fire marshal and deputy fire chief. My brothers worked for Roy City. I know a lot of the firefighters. I know a lot of the policemen. I also worked as the fire department for 4 years, and I've worked in the public service. I've been on a lot of calls with the fire department and with the police officers. I know what great employees we have, and I know we're losing them, and we're losing them fast, and there's a lot of people that can go make more money elsewhere. In our career in the water department, we've lost a lot of people going to different cities making a lot of money. But coming from a career employee who's been here 26 years, who's had a lot of family members here, Roy City is awesome. Roy City's provided for me and for my family. I have 4 kids at home. I have one who's joining the Marines in 2 months. I get really choked up when I'm talking public, so sorry about that. But I want you guys to know how important our employees are, how valuable of an asset that they are to each and every one of our citizens, how willing we are to go out and do what we need to do. There's no question with our police chief, with our fire chief, Chief Golden, Chief Gwynn, they are amazing. I've known them for a very long time. They've known me for a very long time. Also with their public works, I've been there a long, long time. I would also like to bring back COLAs if we could. I think the 21% that we've missed over the past 7 years really hits a home for a lot of these employees. The salary surveys wouldn't have to be as big if we were able to keep those COLAs going. I know we sacrificed the COLAs to get the merits. But back in the day, my wife didn't have to work. My wife stayed home and raised the kids while I worked at Royce City myself and provided for my family. But it was nice getting the 3% COLA and then getting our 3% merit. We were getting 6% a year. That all came to an end 2014, 7 years ago, about 2015, close enough. So I would really amend you guys to look at that. I know you guys have got a challenge in front of you, but also know that you have valuable employees here that are willing to do what you guys need us to do and what the citizens need us to do. Again, thank you so much. I really appreciate my job. I really appreciate you guys, and thank you.
Hey, great comments. Thank you. Okay, anybody else like to share some thoughts before we go out of public hearing? It's a good time. Don't be bashful. Okay, hearing none, then council, do I have a motion to go out of?
You got one.
Please.
Young
No,
lady
no,
wants
that's
to
good.
Young lady wants to speak.
It's important that we do this.
Sorry
Thank
about
you.
that. I was debating about it. My name is Sadan Al-Weeden. I live at 3757 West, 4750 South in Roy. Sorry. Yep, that's my address. So I've lived here for going on 19 years. I am a military dependent. I have grown up all over the world, had amazing experiences, and it was slightly terrifying moving to Utah, just because I wasn't used to a normal life. But this is home. My girls have been raised here. They've graduated. Have friends, and I have had interactions with different police officers, fire departments. They've been to my house or they've been to my neighbors, and even just out and about, they will stop and talk to you. They smile, they say hello. And whenever you hear the sirens, I worry about them. I don't have anybody in my family personally, sorry, that is in law enforcement or that is a police officer. They do this because this is who they are. It's not something that they do so they can walk around and be proud, and it's something inside of them. And as a citizen, if it meant that whatever I need to increase on my end goes up, then you know what? It needs to be done. I know not everybody is going to agree with me, and that's perfectly fine, but we need to do better at showing our appreciation for them. It's great that we get together and we take baskets or treats or this or that. That's an amazing thing to do, but that can only go so far. It's time to now really start showing them that we truly value them. They value being here. They're here because they love the community. They love what we have all helped to create in this community, which is like any other that I have ever lived in and been a part of. And when it comes down to it, I know that if I ever have to personally have them come in, which they have before, and if it has to happen again, I'm not gonna have any fear because I know that they will be there, they'll take care of it, not only me, but my family members, and that when I see them out and about, I can say hello to them, I can talk to them. And I think it's, in my opinion, needs to go and look at the personal value of somebody, that you can say, thank you for what you're doing, and that's a fabulous thing. Everybody loves to be appreciated. but there comes a point in time where you need to step up and make that abundantly clear how much you do appreciate them and do whatever you can to keep them so that we as a community don't struggle. So, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Great comments. We have another, thank you, name and address.
Jacqueline Lewis, 5352 South, 2050 West. I also work here in the utilities department, utility billing. And I just wanted to also share that I definitely agree that the police department and the fire department should definitely be compensated in a way that will allow them to make the choice to stay here when they could easily go somewhere else and make more money. But it's not just them. I'm about to start my 4th position with the city, starting in less than a year. I started last October, and I've just been moving up because so many people have been moving out. And I could also easily go somewhere else and make a lot more money, but I've learned a lot here within this short amount of time, and had really good experiences with my coworkers and my boss and the people that work here. I think everyone at Roy that I've come in contact with gives their full effort. I'm someone who doesn't love being around people who aren't giving their full effort. It stresses me out, and I don't have to deal with that here. I've been very impressed at how professional, even just the lower of us, the utility clerks, the clerks in the other departments conduct themselves and how much they give. And we would all be very grateful as well to receive compensation for the effort that we're giving. So thank you.
Well, thank you. Appreciate those comments. Great. Anybody else? It's usually the hardest is the very last. But before we close this open hearing, it's really important that if you have a voice and you want to share a thought on this, that you share it with us. Okay, seeing none, thank you for the input. Sometimes testimonies are never easy. Sometimes they're very emotional. It's hard to prepare for those, but somebody has to stand up. And it's standing up in front of a council or standing in front of a congressman or anybody else you may find of some value. Interesting enough, they all kind of put the same pants on the same way. At the end of the day, if nobody stands up and says anything, then the perception is everything must be okay. And as a city council, I will tell you, even some of the most difficult meetings where we're making decisions on tens of millions of dollars, nobody shows up. But let me go up there and talk about turkeys or chickens or one of those other things that's important, and this place would be packed. But if you're not willing to say something, if you're not willing to go up there and let your voice be heard, how can the decision makers ever know? It took courage. You did good. We needed to hear that. Thank you. And with that then, do I have a motion then to go out of public hearing?
So moved.
Joel?
I'll second it.
Okay, I got that from Ann.
Yeah.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, council, we are out of public hearing. Here's why I like to approach this, if it's okay with you. In my mind's eye, there are two really important pieces. And Amber, you talked to that a little bit when you did your presentation. You said this: when we had originally went down this path, the original objective would be as we take on the public salary, the employee salary adjustments. This has kind of evolved into a lot more than that. But I think this discussion really is about two things. One is the employee salaries, and then the other is everything else. And I'd like to start with everything else. I don't want to keep the ones who are standing here long, but it may take a little time. But let's see if we can clear the table before we actually go for a vote. I want to hear some comments and questions and your thoughts relative to the issues that deal with the first thing, which is going to be the equipment that we've defined in this package, the vehicles that have been requested, both the fire truck, 1.2, 1.4 million, we think, Chief. We talked about staffing increases. You basically heard about a server unit. You heard about new battalion chiefs. We talked about remodeling. We talked about, although no one mentioned, a pole barn. There's a lot of money involved in this. But I think with the questions been asked that I assume you ask, and certainly the ones I ask, we got some great responses back. And those responses should have helped you to prepare you to fundamentally ask some questions. So if we can just concentrate, I just want to get through this portion of it before we get into the most important, in my opinion, and that deals with employee salary issues. Let's talk about these things first. So let's start this way, if you don't mind. I'm going to ask Joe, you to start. Take a few minutes. Ask the questions you'd like to ask relative to those other things other than employee adjustment, salary adjustments, and then any comments you'd like to have. And let's ask the council to go ahead and do that as we now try to work through this I think I calculated $5.7 million discussion.
So the question I had, one is addressed to equipment, fire truck being first, $1.3 million. Obviously, after watching the fire at the Circle Inn the other night, which was a mutual aid, could have been in our city at any one moment. Our truck was on the front line pumping 10,000 gallons a minute, whatever it is. The need for that truck is there. My question is, do we have to bankroll the 1.3 now, or can we put a deposit down and make step payments along the way until it's delivered? I'm not sure how that works, but it could have a big implication on budget.
So, yes, it can give us a benefit back if we pay so much up front while we're waiting for it to be done. Part of the bid that just came back today did come in just under 1.3 million, Mayor. The bid that came back today was that if we choose one of the options that were given to us, that we could potentially have a truck to us before June.
Ooh.
So that right there gives us, not only does it give us the maintenance or the other delays that we would have of 40 to 50,000, but the increase of the 85 to 90,000 that we would spend on top of the increases that we're expecting to just come just in this next quarter. So that could also go up higher if we didn't. So a significant amount reduced, and if we paid like half now, we could probably get another percentage taken off of that.
So if we're thinking it's going to become June, we would have to budget for the full 1.3. But if it was delivered July 1st, then some of it could be budgeted into next year.
Yes, and I could check into that for you, Councilman Paul.
That could be another budget adjustment. While you're here, Chief, you were talking about a couple of vehicles for battalion chiefs. Are those ones that we can get on the yearly replacement and benefit from zero cost of ownership?
That's exactly. In fact, it was kind of the queue that's kind of going across. I just kind of followed in. If we do that same system and we set it up like with myself and the deputy's vehicle and move those other vehicles that have the years and the modifications done to them into the battalion chief and the utility role at that point, then we can actually rotate those, which would be a potential cost savings to us within our department and our vehicle plan.
I must have started a good thing because we're doing it here now, and North Davis Sewer's doing it on all their vehicles now. So.
Yes, sir, you started a great thing.
Well, it's good. Those were the biggest, the questions I had was that of do we have to budget the whole money for the fire truck, and are we on the yearly replacement? Other than that, I think everything for me was good.
Excuse me, it would be good to budget the entire amount. All of the money might not leave this year, so we might have to re-budget it.
Okay.
But to say $1.3 million needs to be approved so we could actually make that procurement is also necessary. The money might not leave the city bank accounts yet.
Okay, all right, thank you. Appreciate
Great
it.
answers. Go ahead, Randy, your thoughts?
Actually, Chief Golden, don't move. What would we save in terms of maintenance cost if we could get the new ladder truck by June, July timeframe? in comparison to like what we're paying out to keep the current one running?
So the ladder truck right now is probably about 10,000 a quarter we're spending on that and just in maintenance. That's not including the tires and other things that we use on that, which are also replaced multiple times a year on top of. But the last time that it just came out of maintenance, which was in over 30 days, was just $10,200 or there and some change.
So we're looking 20,000 between now and June-ish?
Yeah,
Because
and
we go through
we
two
only
quarters.
have 12,000 left in our budget for that one, so really we got to squeak that by just a little bit farther. So
How did it perform the other
Yeah,
night?
as I said, that was gonna be my next question.
outstanding. In fact, the last fixes they've done to that and the engine have actually done very well. We still have a few issues with some air leaks and hydraulic issues, but they're doing great right now. So
That's good.
Nope, that's all I have. Thank you.
thank you.
Well, while you're there,
You're the man of the hour.
so I was just wondering if you might not share with everyone some of the benefits of the 2 new battalion chief positions and how that fits in with the remodel and stuff like that, because, you know, we've been privy to some of that information, but I don't know if everyone else has, and I thought that might be good for you to verbalize. Thank
Sure,
you.
and yeah, I think I've shared with most people about how that position's actually going to work. And one thing that we have right now is myself and the deputy and the battalion chief when he's not working his shift pieces. That basically we respond from our homes as it stands right now to provide that chief officer coverage. And for that 20 minutes or so before we get there, our captains are performing the role of incident commander on those calls, like the fire that would have went to the other day. And basically they are now not with the crew that they should be with. They're not with that crew. We got crew members that have only been here for a few months. Council member Skaden, when you were there, we actually had 2 fires when you were at the station that one day. And on one, we had one of our newest members have like an air emergency. And we didn't have our captain in with that crew when they were there. And that's the importance of having the experience with them. And that battalion chief can run and be the safety officer, the incident commander, accountability for that period of time. And the company officer, the captain, is the one in the crew with them and have that experience that they need to be in those type of situations. And that's not just fires, that's medicals, other calls that we go on as well. So,
Thank you very much.
do you want me to explain how it ties into the station as well?
I mean, briefly.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah, because right now we literally have set up more of a deputy administrative role, and as a shift battalion chief, they work the 48 on, 96 off, the 2880 schedule that you're aware of, so they actually would live in that fire station for their shift, and so their office and their bunk room would actually be there, whereas the crew, when it's fully staffed, would actually have all the bunk rooms. So it's a matter of battalion chief is the floater at this point. Right now, when Jake, he's got a couple different options to stay in whatever room when he works, but right now he has no dedicated room like the captains or the crew do, and this actually fixes that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Diane, anything else?
Just a sec. I know this fire truck is a big deal. So I'm just wondering, on your fire truck, you said 18 months for the build of it. So do we have a price at the first point and then we stick to that price, or do they bill us at the end and that's what it is at the end?
So if we do a spec build, meaning we go in and write down the specs and give it back to them, versus taking something that meets our needs that's already in production at some point, like what we've got the bids back for. If we do that, then it's 18 to 24 months minimum, and they give us the price now before the increases come January 31st.
Who
And
eats
so
that price if it's, I mean, because you see the inflation of everything. Who eats that?
Actually they'll hold true to the cost if we do it now. If we hold off and wait till next budget year, that will increase based off of the inflation of what it will be at that point, which is anticipated 7.22% as of January 31st, minimum.
Okay, thank you.
Sophie, anything else? Ann, questions, comments?
I have comments, not many questions because everything has been answered. I just wanted to thank Matt and Amber. I mean, Amber got thrown into the fire like crazy coming into this new job and to be handling this proposal. Thank you, Amber and Matt. Good thing we got a smart manager who knows a lot about numbers. But I don't know if this is appropriate to talk now, but I have lived in Roy pretty much my whole entire life. When I knew most of the policemen, I'm looking back there on the wall of the mayors, and I know 5 mayors all the way over. And I see when I became a council member, I had no idea how many former Roy High students went to school with my kids or now employees of Roy City. And I see Roy City as a family. And I've gotten to know so many of them throughout the years, and I have heard nothing but we are like a family. And I applaud them for everything that they do in this city, because I can't imagine when I was young and roamed the streets of Roy. I felt safe then, and now we're almost 40,000 people, and the mental health of what you have to deal with, and I saw the starting wages and was in shock that your employees worked and handled all the things that you have to handle with these wages. And I've learned a lot being on the city council, but I've learned the most important thing is how much this is a family community and how that's what keeps employees here. And we have lost some good ones, and I'm tired of us training them and having them go to other cities. I just want to know how much I appreciate all of you that you do for Roy City, and I just applaud you for all your efforts.
Thank you, Ann. Okay, I just got one question. Actually, when I reviewed, and I do my review, I look at all data, and if you all got anything from me, and I know Andy basically doesn't necessarily like what I have to say sometimes because I have a tendency to be a little biased, I put all the issues on the table. And interesting enough, after getting the answers I got back from you, chiefs, you did a good job. Okay, I got some solid answers, and I have an understanding exactly what you're proposing in terms of equipment. I appreciate Mark. I'm not sure if he's still here, but you did a good job explaining to me in terms of what that UPS is all about and what we're trying to do with that new server unit. I know, Matt, you and Amber put some effort in terms of defining a lot of questions dealing with costs. And I think when that was shared with you, Council, I can't help but think, at least in this category, you probably were able to listen and read, and you come up with an understanding a little better in terms of what really we're talking about. Because I will be honest with you, in 6 years I've been here and about 34 years in federal service, I've never in my entire career ever had to face a $5.7 million discussion over a Christmas holiday. Now, some of you may have went to Florida, Chief, okay, and I applaud you, okay? And if you could get away, I hope you did. But this was a tough decision. And it was a tough decision at the wrong time. But we didn't have any choice. We can save some money if we buy a ladder truck. We can save some employees if we do the right thing. But the fact of the matter is, this being handed to a city council with 2 brand new council members, and I'm going to be ignorant here, that may have a hard time really pronouncing city council, let alone understanding how it works. This was a tough one. I got 4 more years. This will not happen again. But after reviewing the issues, after you explained everything, the equipment, the vehicles, the staffing, the server, certainly the discussion about battalion chiefs, the remodeling, and a pretty darn good explanation about that $1.3 million we have to do to a fire truck, I come away pretty impressed. So, Chief Golden, I only got one question. You need to fine-tune your battalion chief position description, because some of the wording in there basically says you have one battalion chief and they are mobile. And they could be called out any time in a 24-hour service. And then you talked about they could be an incident commander, and then you turn around and say they are an incident commander. There may just need to be a little tweaking to your new position description if you're going to put If the decision is tonight to allow you to purchase and apply and get 2 new battalion chiefs, just simply update the position description. Now, isn't that interesting? After spending as many hours and hours and hours going through these new additions to the employee adjustment, that's the only recommendation I have, Chief. You guys did a good job. And the explanations were perfect. Now, I can't speak to how the council is going to vote tonight on this particular portion, but I feel pretty good. That's a good job. So let's get on to the more difficult one. Y'all came here because the council needs to talk about salary adjustments. So I think it's time we talk about them. So let's get into it. Here's how I like to do it. I think it's a good way, council. You've had lots of information. Lots of stuff was thrown at you. I can't help to think, to be very blunt with you, you probably cursed me a few times because I put a lot of stuff in your plate. And to be very honest with you, I'm sure Andy did not sleep well. I know Matt didn't. But I'm pretty blunt. And I'll ask the hard questions. And I do that. I've done it for 6 years, and I will continue to do that. But I will tell you, this is a tough one. This is a tough one. And I don't want anybody walking out of here tonight to think that this is tough because it's not deserving. This is not an issue about deserving. This is an issue that talks about how do we get here and how do we make sure we don't do this again. And that's probably a discussion that should have happened during a work session, Diane, that we will not have an opportunity to discuss tonight because we just don't have time. So let's do this. I'm going to start with Joe again. Joe, I want you to ask any questions you have relative to salaries, and I'd like you to make a comment. I'm not asking you to decide the vote. That will come shortly, but you have comments, you have thoughts. I think every council member does, and I think the audience, the people who are watching from home in this group need to understand where you're coming from and in terms of what you're thinking as we make this incredibly important decision tonight. So, Joe, we'll start with you.
Thank you, Mayor. Well, I can say I read everything that Matt sent me. I can say I read everything that the mayor sent me. I spent all of New Year's and Christmas reading stuff about this and discussing fairness, discussing what it meant to the city, what it meant to the residents. I could tell you I've been in Roy for 22 years now. When I first moved to Roy, I'll be honest, I was embarrassed to tell people I lived in Roy because of the stuff that happened in this city. We're always in the news. But as I come to grow and work with the city and find friends and staff and friends in the town, this is my home. I grew up in Bountiful. I'll never call it my home. Roy will always be my home. It's often talked about the difference of taking care of the residents versus taking care of the employees. In my opinion, they're one and the same. Because if we can't keep good employees, we can't take care of the residents. I'm a conduit of information from the residents to the city. I'm not going to be the one that gets out and digs the ditch, put out the fire, writes the ticket. I'm going to pass that along to Matt, who's going to pass it along to the department heads and ensure that it gets done. And I dang well want to make sure that we've got the right people with the right skills doing the right jobs to take care of those residents that I represent. And so I will make the comment that I agree. The talk about COLA, I'm 100%. If we make minor adjustments every year as a council, we hope that we don't get here. We've talked about, since I've been on the council, every 3 years, we're going to adjust some departments. That's moved all over the board because every department had a different need at a different time and we had to take care of different people. So, in my opinion, there were 2 departments that got their raises on July 1st. There are now 3 departments that are up for raises. I'm 100% supportive of back pay because, in my opinion, that level sets every full-time employee in this city to July 1. That, to me, is fair and equitable. Others may not agree. I was the one that first stated it across this dais, and I will defend it. Do we need to figure out how to get away from this? Definitely. I love, when Leon got up and talked about COLA. I've been talking about that for the last 2 weeks. Do we have the right merit system? Do we have the right step system? Do we need a COLA system? Because as Daryl Illam got up and talked about, that 6% adjustment every year for a merit and COLA keeps us from getting into this position. It's easier to budget as a council member for a COLA than it is, what does a salary survey look like? I have no idea. I can't budget $1.5 million and hope that that's enough or not enough. And so I will make the commitment to the residents to take care of the employees and figure out a way forward so we don't get to this position anymore. There were many questions I had about the many things that were presented. I have full faith in our staff that they've done their part. It's tough to compare apples to apples. I think they've done a good job. The one thing I made the comment multiple times is this wage survey is no respecter of persons. We are setting the wage to a position, not a person. And that has two sides to it, and I'm not going to get into that because I respect what we have. But at the end of the day, I support it. I will stand up in front of the citizens and say I support it, and I will do everything in my power to try to keep this city in a viable situation. Many things have happened. We saw sales tax increase because of online purchases. That's the way of the future. There's a Amazon distribution center being built right down the road. You'll be able to click online and have stuff at your front door within 5 hours. There are big box retailers right now that are already looking at partnering with Amazon to deliver their product. I make a conscious effort. I spent over $75,000 in parts for mine and my friends' razors this last year. They all were delivered to my front doorstep. You know who got the sales tax on that? Roy City. The other day, I went into Lowe's and I looked at something and I thought, do I need that right now? Or can I order it and get it in 2 days and the city gets the benefit of it? Those are the things that all of us as residents can be doing. Now, am I saying get rid of retail? No, we still need it. There's niches everywhere. But I can only think that as the online purchases continue, cities like Clinton and Riverdale are going to be in trouble because we have the residents, they don't. You can even go online to Carvana and order a car and have it delivered to your front door, and Roy City gets the sales tax on it. So I don't think, did the stimulus money help? Definitely. Did the fact that we were all cooped up inside our house help? Definitely. But I think a lot of people opened their eyes to say, hey, I can even have my groceries delivered to my front door, and I don't have to pick them up. So, I'll do all that I can to make sure the city is viable for the future, but also take care of the residents through taking care of the employees. Thank you for your efforts. I appreciate all of you.
Okay. Thank you for the input. Randy, comments?
Perfect. I want to 100% echo Joe Paul's sentiment. The state of Utah, when they came out and we were doing COVID predictions, they were predicting that, correct me if I'm wrong, Matt, it was like we were going to see an 18% reduction in sales tax revenue. 11. We have seen the adverse of that, correct? And it's mainly because they weren't properly factoring in sales tax revenue generation. They saw a 300% increase. All one has to do is look at our city's current sales tax revenue generation, and we're roughly breaking even at about 50% of online sales tax revenue is where our city revenue is coming from. When you look at the Burgoyning crisis in terms of what it is for our law enforcement, our police officers, and even our administrative staff, it is a buyer's market for skills, both in the free market and in the public space. If you look at what was just released today, over 4.5 million people, 4.5 million people in November alone changed jobs because it is such a, skills, you can go out and shop your skills and get paid more. So again, I don't necessarily have any questions, but what we need to do, and as somebody who has lived in Roy pretty much effectively since I was 5 years old, I myself as a citizen, we need to retain top talent. And this here tonight is my promise to both the citizens as well as to the employees that I will stand to do right by you to see that we go about and continue to retain the top talent that we actually have. And we have to trust our professional staff. Kudos to Matt, kudos to Natalie, kudos to Amber for going about and putting all this information together in terms of the salary survey, but we need to have a systematic means with which we can go forward to where we do, again, merits plus COLAs, or whatever we determine going forward, to where we can properly not have these big swings where we're having to go in and respond to what the market demands are. And I'll rest with that.
Thank you, Randy. Diane, comments?
I have a few questions, surprising as that
Please.
is. One of the first questions I'd like to ask, when, and so this is probably Matt and Amber, when were our salary and wages non-competitive? I mean, when did this big jump and change occur? Was it, we had a big motion and movement with across-the-board raises for the county and things like that? Was it July, October? So, when would you say that ours became non-competitive?
I really started noticing the change right when I first came here, actually. So back in 2011, 2008, the economy kind of went downhill. That's actually when I went to the the private sector, or the Utah Transit Authority. There I didn't get raises, and when I came here, I didn't get raises. Slowly what happened is, in 2011, we couldn't afford to ongoing raises, and so we started doing bonuses. 2013 came, and we did a salary survey, and that came up with all the employees coming up to par. But from that point on, we weren't getting COLAs, and then what happened also is we weren't doing merits. And in 2017, there was such compression with the employees that we did a major tax increase and try to separate those employees. I recall a good friend of mine, police officer, he was, I think, a 5-year officer, and he was training another police officer that was making his same wage. And so that's the reason why we were so reactive in doing that. But since then, we have put all of our efforts into this COLA, or into this merit system, or this STEP program, because of that big change. But we've neglected to do anything with the COLAs. So from 2013 to now, we're basically paying people, or our wage scale is on 2013 data. And then you can see the discrepancies. That's why some of these wages are so far off. People were getting that merit to distinguish them from 1 year to 2 years, but nothing was being done with the pay scale. There's a happy medium in all things, and we should be taking care of both of them. There's a lot of things that we inherit when we come into different positions, and this salary survey is one of them. I disagree with it. I think you do a salary survey every so often, but to do something every year, it's so cumbersome. Like Councilmember Paul says, it's so difficult to come up with that $1.5 million. But to directly answer the question, I think way back into like 2011 is when we were starting to see a big difference from us versus other agencies. Before, during the 2000s, before my time, it was, Daryl Elam said it, you were getting like a 6% raise. You're getting a 3.5% merit and a 3% COLA. During that time, we're getting a lot of franchise taxes that was also funding a lot of those COLAs and those raises, though. But during that time, we were also really, really competitive within the other cities.
So when you talk about the 2017 increase, I believe that's the 37% property tax increase that was passed at that time that you're referring to.
Correct.
And so that increase was about $800,000. So that didn't actually even get the staff to a competitive level at that point. Is that what I hear you saying?
It evened out a 1-year officer or a 1-year firefighter from a 2-year firefighter at 80%. So I shouldn't say I wasn't an administrator at that time, but I was a city employee. But it took that wage and basically calculated where you should be in a pay scale, if given the fact that you were getting these raises over time. And then the only money that we had is to calculate that at 80% of what it should be. But there was a difference between a 1-year staff member and a 2-year staff member.
But to answer that question, I think what we need to define is that wasn't the STEP programs able to make that separation? Because then it was based on how many years you were in.
It only funded at 80%, though. at
Well,
that given time.
Okay, I'm struggling here. I was on the city council when that decision was made. I sat through at least 2 and I think 3 work sessions. And when it all set out, there was only we were dealing with wages, and there was only, and you can go to the record, it was in there, and this is what the city said to us as council. 13% of that tax, 13% of that 37% needed to be to bring the salaries in compliant. 13%. What surprised me was what happened at least a couple of days before the Truth and Taxation meeting. Somebody went in there and says, 13% isn't going to work, we need other things, and they kicked that up to 37%.
And Mayor, I can't speak to that because I wasn't an administrator
I
at
was.
the time. So from the financial end of it, when we were calculating the different pay scales of people, I can just tell you that the money that was brought in separated the employees at 80% of what it should be from 1 to 2. After that, the public safety went on a separate step system because during that time of calculation, it was that 2% to 2.5%. And of that, it was only calculated at 80%. I can't speak to the tax increase, any of that. I had nothing to do with it. But I was in the finance department that did calculate those step in between employees.
And we put the steps in there because I was in the council when the approval was basically made that we would convert over to the step program at the request of chiefs. They're the ones that drove it. They had our ear, and they made a compelling argument.
Yeah, and I can't disagree with that, but I think that in relation to what Councilmember Wilson is saying is what minimum is being looked at of being competitive? What minimum of a police officer is going to be competitive with other markets? And that last assessment was done in 2013.
Well, okay. And I think you bring a good point, but let me try to answer the question from my perspective. June 24th, I'll pick a day, it's about that time. There were riots going on in Salt Lake. I think 60 some odd officers walked off of Salt Lake City's police department. Well, we sent 21, 22 of our officers down there to basically deal with that fight. And it was ugly. And I can't help to think that some officers here were probably right there defending, in my opinion, freedom. And the interesting thing that come out of that I still irks me today is the fact is that it appears to be the leadership of that city felt more about the people who are abusing the officers and tearing that town apart than they did about the officers who were protecting them. And I was upset. And you should have been too. And something happened. And we started to see a divide. And I can't help to think there were 2 significant things happen. And I think before that, the issue is that when the legislator says, I'm going to basically tear open the entire retirement program and establish a tier 2, and when that happened, I started seeing the decay of our ability to basically bring officers. I seen it year after year after year in our public safety program. So if you want to kind of look at exactly when all of this happened, when things really started to shake and bake around here, then I would say find the date. In fact, I think it was in 2016 when, in fact, the legislators stripped the retirement program and established 2 for all the right financial reasons. And it impacted the very basic, in my opinion, the very foundation of exactly our public safety program, and it's been going downhill from there. And my concern's going to be is that we didn't cause it. I sure and heck didn't vote on it. But I'll tell you what, you want to see when things got really crazy? You go look and see what the cities did around June, and then October, and then on November of this last year. And then you started to see the 8, the 9, the $10 an hour raises. It went crazy in the last 3-4 months. Absolutely over the top. And every city along this municipalities that I'm aware of and the mayors that I'm working with, they were in panic mode because we were just bleeding. And you know what bothers me the most? Is that other institutions, other cities, other counties just sucked them dry. Because a place like Salt Lake can pay $26 and $27. A place like Taylorsville I had to look that place up to figure out where it was. $28, $29 an hour. We have no choice. And if you've seen, Matt, and you did, as I'm sitting in my WACOG meetings with my fellow mayors and county commissioners, and I'm hearing them says, I got to do a tax increase. I got to basically do this, and I'm going to have to pay more. And I kept sending those to you every meeting, every mayor's, from North Ogden to South Ogden. Everybody was basically saying is, we've got to give a lot more money to our public safety. And they were. And they did. And you know what bothers me the most, Matt? Your conversation you had with Clinton's city manager. When Davis County went up there and they made an edict that they're going to go ahead and they're going to go up there and they're going to now force all of the cities to get their paramedic service. And that city manager goes out there and basically calls Matt and simply says, I'm going to take 2 of your paramedics. Bank on it. And as far as I know, Chief, they did. And you know the saddest part about this cotton-picking craziness about this is I think we have an interlocal agreement with Clinton. And so we just basically provide the service. So it didn't make, I don't think they blinked an eye when they basically sucked us dry. Take good people. That bothers me. Bothers me today. I'll give you a date. You can back this up with data. June 23rd.
And I agree with that. Things started going crazy after that time. The reason why I answered the question the way I did is it's important to keep up with this.
That's right.
When we're not doing something and other cities are, that's when we're falling behind.
That's right.
But then when things went crazy, that's when we really fell behind. But it's important to keep up with the COLAs and keep competitive year after year after year because we can't keep on doing this. When we go into the 2017 year and we're so far out of whack that we have to make a major adjustment, and then here we are tonight making a major adjustment because we failed to react on the other end. It's important to keep consistent. It's important to do both ends of the merit and the COLA.
Okay.
Thank you. So in regards to the comment made about the retroactive pay, so it sounds like the wage changes were pretty close to the July 1st time, which the retroactive pay would be, but there was also a comment of possibly staging that. I don't know if that's like a reverse sign-on bonus or staging that pay, that retroactive pay for loyalty going forward. Is that an idea that something could be done, or how does something like that work, or what are some of your thoughts in regards to that comment?
We can make anything happen. Whatever the council wants from here, we can make anything happen. So if we wanted to do something on that end or on the way that we presented it, I think the body of the council has that vote, so.
I think we need to clarify exactly what she's asking. The council, you need to make sure you understand what's being requested. What's going to take place, based on what I think I heard, and Diane, correct me, if you award the retroactive pay, I think what she's basically saying is it's got to be conditional, which means that if you're going to issue a check for $15,000, $20,000 for retroactive pay, technically that person can come in, take that money, and the next day put a 2-week notice in and leave. And I'm sensing what she's saying is, she says, I don't want him to get the bonus, okay, the retroactive pay, and then walk away. She wants some condition to be put on that particular thing. Did I miss anything in that?
I think that's a good way
Okay.
to describe it.
So for that to take place, I'll kind of catalog this, and Matt, you need to help me. We just need to kind of make sure that if that's supportive, that if there's a motion to approve anything, that it has to be conditional on the council agreeing to these kinds of additions. And that's the first thing I've heard so far that talks about making some modification to the agreement. Okay, I'm okay with your comment?
Yes,
Okay.
I think that's a good clarification of it. And then another question I have is, we certainly are anticipating that our sales tax revenues will remain elevated, but certainly there have been some unprecedented reasons that could possibly be up. So I am going to I think it needs to be at least brought up and discussed if the sales tax revenues don't remain elevated, what are proposed ways to fund these raises in the future? I mean, once we do this, I mean, it was commented, the reason we didn't have these pay increases was because we couldn't afford it. And when we're having troubles for staff needing raises, we also have troubles for our citizens trying to pay those raises. And so I believe that needs to at least be explored or discussed somewhat. It doesn't mean that things aren't deserved, but in 2011 up to 2017, those raises were probably well-deserved, but somewhere, somehow, they had to be paid for. And so I don't know if you or other people can address that. I mean, there are certainly obvious answers to that, but maybe we can have some discussion. Maybe Amber's got some ideas or as well, but I think we need a little bit of a discussion in regards to that. And if you want to jump in or whoever wants to jump in, but
That does lead to a hard discussion. Right now, we're 11% over the last fiscal year in sales tax. Can I explain exactly why this is happening? That's very difficult. Can I explain when I think there's going to be a shift? If you were to ask me 2 years ago, I thought we were going into a recession, and the budget reflected that of saying 11%. I thought that we were going down this road a long time ago, and I was surely wrong with that. So it's difficult to say of what are we going to do? I can tell you that there's only one source of revenue that we have a choice over, and that's property tax. But when you look at what we get in sales tax, it doubles what we get in property tax. We get a big number from that. So to say that leads to harder discussions of cutting services or raising some other sources of revenue.
thank you. So those are some of my comments right now that I'd like to start with.
Okay, thank you, Diane. Sophie, thoughts?
Yes, a couple of my questions were already answered with the sales tax and the increase. That's a huge concern on where does that money come from. I also would like to talk to, and I don't know if it's today, even a comment that can be made today, retention bonuses. I had the opportunity when those emails started coming out 7-10 days ago. Yeah, holiday vacation went from hanging out to reading like multiple emails, hundreds of pages that I think it is. So I had to become an expert really fast. And so I contacted a few city councilmen at Ogden City, and they were super helpful in helping me figure out, so I could get a broader spectrum, a broader view of what's going on, because they just did this. And I was pleased with what they had to say. Their retention program was something that I would love to look into a little bit more. And this salary survey, I'm with the mayor. I don't want to be in this position again. And it's crazy that it took, and now we're in such a crunch that it has to be so quick. Again, Matt answered every one of my questions, and I could not, the way they went through and found everything, laid it all out for us, amazing. Absolutely amazing. So, yes.
Okay, thank you, Sophie. Ann, thoughts?
Well, I had a long discussion with Matt yesterday about the sales tax and, the financial state that the city is in right now, which is great. And, I have 2 children that live in this city and been discussing things with them. There's no way they're never not going to shop on Amazon, I can tell you that right now. And they even have their groceries delivered, and I can never see that going away. But I talked to them about the safety of the city, and if, we get these raises and then, we don't have the tax revenue, what would they agree to do? Because, you talk about these other cities and how much they pay, but it costs a lot more money to live in those cities also than it does to buy a house in Roy and live in Roy. And I paid $26,000 for my first house in Roy. You can't even buy a nice car for that now. And they're like, Mom, I would rather to have safety of my family if I had to do a property tax increase, an increase in taxes. Me and Matt talked about this, and what we talked about having a tax increase, it would be like $45 a year for a household in Roy. And, that's not something anybody wants to do, but my children and me would do that if that was what it came down to. And I think most citizens in Roy, you know, an increase to pay for the safety of their family and the fire and just the infrastructure of the city, that's just something that would have to be done. Hopefully it never will have to be done, but nobody, like Matt says, we can't foresee the future. You know, I mean, you can only store so much toilet paper and do everything, and like my basement's full. You need any? So I think a lot of people bought a lot of food, and we're lucky. We have 4 grocery stores in Roy. Not very many cities, you know, have that, and I think that's helped us out a lot too. We have the burger bar, and so, and I think with everything we're going to be doing to Roy and the widening 5600, and hopefully bring in more businesses, and we'll bring in even more, hopefully some restaurants or a hotel and things in the future. I mean, we can't foresee the future, but hopefully some good things will come to Roy. But I think we do whatever it takes to keep our city safe. So.
Okay, all great comments. Let me just add to it. Let me just make it clear, Mayor does not have a vote. But I do have a voice. And if you know me, Travis, I never miss an opportunity to make a comment. That's just who I am. And the fact is that I spent most of the Christmas holiday basically looking at all sides of this issue. And I send it to you, Council, all sides. So let me share the all sides with you so you kind of understand the complexities of this challenge. First thing is that when it comes to the adjustment in pay, I have been an advocate as mayor, and Matt can testify, I have been basically making it absolutely clear we need to do something. I was witnessing as I was attending my meetings with my counterparts within the counties that something was happening and we were falling behind. I can tell you when those all started, and I can tell you honestly exactly what was being proposed. From county commissioners looking me in the face, I'm going to give every employee in that county $2 raise, and I heard them tell me that personally, and they did. To Neil Berube in North Ogden making adjustments to his pay. And you can go on and on and on. And by the way, with that, Ann, if you notice in the paper, some of them had to find some ways to come up with some more property tax increases to cover the expense. It was just how they did. What Roy City does better than anybody else is we see the future and we plan for the future. I remember very clearly when Chris Davis basically was in city manager job, and some of you were here, when we went through that terrible time back in 2009, 2013, when they would not hire anybody and they did not pay you merit. You got nothing. And it wasn't the fact is that you didn't deserve it. The fact of the matter is the bottom of the economy dropped out. And luckily, unless somebody can tell me differently, nobody, not a single person got fired. That's pretty powerful. And I'll bet you other cities, municipalities, and counties could not say the same thing. Roy City takes care of them. Roy City's always taken care of them. And the challenge that we face and we walked in this Christmas season would be is we've got to deal with this issue. So let me paying out all the facts, and then let me just make my comment, and then I'm going to go for the vote. From January 1st, 2019 until March 15th of 2021, I'm giving you the time and I provided you the data. There was a measurement, Chief, that you basically put together was powerful. And you asked the question and defined the answer that says, during that time, what was the non-retirement turnover rate? And I'll tell you what, you were pretty spot on. We lost 7% of our officers. But Bren, you lost 87% of your street crew. Okay? We lost people out of parks. We lost people out of water. We lost services. What bothered me the most, and I'm going to be honest with you guys out of the administrative office, because oftentimes your voice is ever heard. I've stood in front of city council meetings when the chiefs have stood up and they says, I need more money for my people, and they got it. Every time they ask, they got it. Even at the 11th hour, when Chief Como, never forget that, we're ready to approve the budget. He stood in front of the council, had his group of people behind him, and he went up there and he simply says, I need a $50,000 salary increase. This caught us all cold. I know it caught you, Matt, cold. It surely as mayor caught me cold. And he was compelling, and he was convincing, and he got his salary increase. But nobody stood up in front of this from administration. Nobody stood up from Public Works. Nobody stood up from Parks and Rec. And to be very blunt with you, in my opinion, in my 6 years I've been here, you've always been left out. It's always about public safety. And if you didn't hear the testimony that we heard today, and definitely the testimony that's taken place, okay, by this group, you're hearing a lot of things. It's all about public safety. I'm not diminishing your role because you play a powerful influence in this community. But if we don't have administration collecting the revenue, if we don't have Public Works cleaning up the water and the sewage, if we don't provide the parks the way the people expect them, then I'm telling you, we're not going to be much of a city. And I remember, and I'm telling you this true, Dave DeFoy and I rarely ever believed in anything together. We were always on opposite sides as a council member. But I remember very clearly when we had a work session working on a budget, and the conversation was in that meeting, we needed to take care of our public safety. Travis, you were there. And Dave and I both said to the group and says, we're not leaving anybody out. If we're going to provide a salary increase, and we did, everybody was going to get that salary increase. And they did. That budget was approved. So I'm not going to ignore the other great performers in this city, because there's a lot of them. The only difference is some of them don't save lives every day, but I guarantee you, when you get a complaint and you got somebody yelling and screaming at the top of their voice, humiliating you from all different directions because they don't like what they have to pay, that's pretty darn hard to take. Pretty darn hard to take. And you know what? Our team was professional. They stayed cool under fire, and they did their job. And I promise you, you will not see that in the paper. So here's the facts. Up until March 15th, it looked like the public safety were in pretty good shape. Turnover rates were 7. Fire was experiencing a little bit of problem, Chief, to be honest with you. But Chief Como come into that meeting and he says, I needed more money to help stabilize. And it stabilized. If not for just a couple of minutes, it stabilized. But from that, you as a council, and 3 of you are sitting on this stand, we said last year in that budget, we're going to fix it. And for the first time I can remember, Brandon and Travis, we finally said that the Public Works and the Rec Department were going to get their due. And they got it. And within that budget that you approved, and you approved that budget, you said the next year, this coming July, you're going to take care of some of the others. And we're going to put a program in place Matt created that says every 3 years, we're going to make sure that we take care of every employee in this city, including the ones who are not considered in this package, which is, in all fairness, the city council and our people who basically are part-time. They are nowhere in this. And Chief, to be honest with you, I can't help to think those crossing guards are probably a little envious when they can go across another city and see a $2 or $3 or $4 an hour raise somewhere else that they haven't got included in this particular discussion. The most important part I want to share you, if you have not looked at the data, we got 4 positions out of this survey that gets nothing. 0. And we got 3 to 6 positions here that get 1 or 2%. Surely a 1 or 2% would be enough for them to go out and buy themselves maybe a lunch. But surely is not going to make a difference. I questioned the very foundation of the salary survey, and I have solid evidence to suggest is it needs to be reworked. But that's for another conversation. Let me just paint the facts. I've looked at the data as it comes in. I've looked at the timing of the comes in. I've looked across most of the cities along the Wasatch Front that's in Davis and Weber County, and I'm telling you this. You want to know how come Roy City and all the other cities are getting really good sales tax? 3 reasons, and they all have to do with the pandemic. First, for some reason, the federal government says we're going to do a CARES Act, and we pumped a lot of money. Roy City pumped $3 million into this economy. $3 million in the last few years. We gave child credits. We basically give people $300 extra a week on unemployment. You knew about this. You probably heard about this. They also went up there and simply says, and if you look where Roy City is gaining its most of its sales tax, a big piece of that is in food. We just went right through the roof on sales tax on food. Why? Because Ann said it best. People were buying toilet paper. They were buying food. They weren't doing the normal stuff. They're just surviving. And the government pumped a lot of money to help them survive. Online purchases. You don't go to stores. You just basically order online. Incredible. Incredible for Roy City. Shop local is my theme, and if you can't shop local, shop online and have it delivered to your home. Ogden's even considering right now allowing all of their employees to ship their Amazon and all these other ones right to work. Because interesting enough, where it's delivered is where the sales tax is collected. I mentioned to someone today, Kimberly, sit down with Matt. If you can convince the employees that they want a safe place and not worry about those porch pirates, deliver them to Roy City. And if they do, we get the sales tax. You know about the vehicles. This pandemic has cut off the supply line. Guess what kind of vehicles they're buying? They're surely not buying brand new ones. They're buying used ones. And guess what Roy City has a lot of? Used car dealers. If you look at the 3 big drivers of sales tax in Roy City, it's going to be food sales, it's going to be online sales, and it's going to be vehicles. That's what the data shows. My concern is when the pandemic slows down or stops, what's the impact? And I can't answer that, and we don't know. If you have not heard, you need to hear it. UDOT right now is already making plans to basically widen 5600 and change the interstate. Starting in May of this year, UDOT is going to start purchasing 75 properties in Roy, 15 businesses, 56 homes. In those businesses and homes is sales tax and definitely property tax. When UDOT purchases that, and their plan is to get those purchases for the most part done this year, UDOT does not pay property tax on their property. Let me repeat that. UDOT does not pay Roy City any property tax. Those 2 buildings are on the south side of 5600, the old Sinclair station and the So Delicious restaurant, they're owned by UDOT. And there will be no revenue to Roy City for 3 years. And guess what? And this is the harder part, Travis, and you've heard me say this. When UDOT gets done with 5600, there's going to be in a 2.5-mile park. 2.5-mile active transportation, biking and walking park. That's what's going to replace all that homes, all those people. And Roy City will not get a dime for that. In fact, to be honest with you, Travis, you need to be planning where you're going to hire the people to be able to carry forth and maintain that property that UDOT will give to Roy City, because it's going to fall into the Parks and Rec side. It's going to be yours. Roy has other needs. When I first came to the Senate Council, I talked to Dave and I talked to Ross, and they basically told me, Dave a little more formally says, Bob, he says, you need to understand one thing. There's an $80 million infrastructure bill that Roy City has to pay. We're talking about streets, we're talking about water, and we're talking about sewer. In my conversation with Public Works yesterday, they're estimating that bill is $100 million. And we do that. And all we're spending on infrastructure is $3 million. Do the calculation. 33 years we have got to basically to catch up at $3 million. We just don't have the money. That's a big bill. We promised our residents we would get a cemetery. Matt and I have been working that for 3 years now. We're so close, but we got to buy that property. Police department, chief, you need 5 new officers. I suspect that'll be in the budget. You made a pretty good convincing case to me why you needed them. It's going to cost us about $400,000 to hire 5 more officers. But you know what? If you're compromising the integrity of our training because you can't afford our officers to break away from their assignments because they have to be on duty because we don't have any backup, we got a problem. And we got to fix that. According to Park and Recs, we got a $710,000 bill on our complex. You got to pay for that. And it's getting older, 50 years now. Not getting better. Aquatic Center needs another $300,000. These are big bills. And I will indicate to you, we got a ramp project that's going to be over $2 million. We're going to go in for $1 million ramp project, and they're going to ask us to come up the other $1 million. These are tough times in an organization that's got so much demand on the money. Here's the bottom line, and I'll be blunt. I'm sensing from this council, including me, tonight, I'm hoping, I'm praying we will fix the disservice and make this salary adjustment well. But I'm going to tell you publicly, I struggle $750,000 in back pay. Roy City did not cause this, but we're facing to have to deal with it. And if I have one complaint on that issue, it's about fairness. Not more than a couple of months ago, Roy City Council approved a salary adjustment for both Public Works and Parks and Rec. And nowhere in that plan did we go back and pay them, even though there was direct evidence that started back almost a year earlier. Nowhere in that you'll find that they got any retroactive pay. And to be very honest with you, I'm not so sure the employees are so much concerned about retroactive pay than to fix the pay tonight, to fix it right tonight. And that's what I'm hoping the city council does. Get this job done tonight. But I'm going to tell you, we got some big bills to pay, and somehow we got to pay it. And I want to make sure we have the money in the piggy bank to do so. So here's my comment, council, and I'll close with this. Let's do the right thing. I'm not going to make any reference whether you agree with me on the back pay or not, but I'm saying to you this. If we're going to fix this, then council, I would ask you to support these salary adjustments. I question, to be honest with you, some of those were $13 an hour pay bump. I've made that very public, and I don't like it. But at the end of the day, when it's all said and done, sometimes you just simply have to bow to some when you don't like it all, but we do what's right for the most and everybody. And tonight we need to fix this so that our public servants, our public safety, surely our administrative team, okay, who do a hard-working job, that the team walks out and noise that says that we definitely care about them. Give them what they need, give them what they deserve, and let's deal with what we have to deal with. I'll close with that comment. With that, council, any further comments before I go for the vote?
I do have a couple of questions. Wondering if you could just tell us about how many man-hours does a salary survey take?
Simple answer, too many hours, but I think it was about a month and a half of nonstop of one employee to do that.
Okay. And then I was wondering, if this goes through for this, as proposed increase for salary, including back pay, then I was just wondering how much is in the bank? Say if we had no more sales tax or things way, I mean, how much is in the bank for us for future if things fall out? You know, how much time do we have to make up the difference if things fall, the bottom falls out?
Yeah, it was important to get that, the CAFR, or the annual financial reports. We had that presentation the last council meeting. In that, we like to see the city, the general fund, fund balance around 18%. We settled at 29%. So we have around $6 million of unassigned revenue in the general fund. We have $5.7 million in capital infrastructure fund. So we do have a little bit of money.
So that would be our backup in case the bottom falls out. So we've got a little bit of
That's
time.
what general fund, that's what the general fund is there for. That's what that surplus revenue is for a rainy day.
Thank you for specifically stating those numbers. Thank you.
Well, then I motion for approval of Resolution 22-1 as stated, approval of the fiscal year 22 budget adjustments.
Okay, so I now have a motion to approve Resolution 21-1, which is the fiscal year 2022 budget adjustment. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Jack seconded. Hold on, Randy, I'm gonna write this down. This is a roll call vote. Now, I should indicate to you, this does not include any issues or dealings about making people responsible if they take the bonus. What Councilman Diane suggested was that you include, unless they're in the motion as a recommendation to include that provision, then we have to vote based on what's on the table. And by the way, the real issue about that retention is that I think I'm echoing her point, an individual could take the bonus that you're going to authorize tonight if you approve this, and the next day they can put their 2-week notice in and walk. And there's not a thing you can do about that. Understand that when we take this vote. I'm going to do a roll call vote. I got a first and a second. Kimberly, please give us a roll call vote.
It's Brittany, Mayor.
Or Brittany, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. She'll make sure I remember that. Thank you, Brittany.
Councilmember Joe Paul.
Aye.
Councilmember Wilson.
Aye.
Councilmember Scadden.
Aye.
Councilmember Jackson.
Aye.
And Councilmember Sophie Paul.
Aye.
Okay, perfect. We are done. Okay. For your information, although it may seem a little thing, what is stated in the recommendations, you've probably all seen, effective tonight with retroactive pay all the way back to 1st of July, Royce City will basically make all the salary adjustments, okay? It's a good night for Royce City. Okay, thank you. Okay, with that, we got one more discussion item we need to go through. Travis, I need you here, please.
Front and center.
Now for some fun stuff.
Yeah. I've been waiting for this
Let's
one.
play pickleball. We're going to have a city pickleball tournament.
Mayor and City Council, I'm back again. It's nice to be here. I don't have a ton to add to the conversation that we've had over the last couple City Council meetings. A couple of things I did want to kind of maybe discuss a little bit was we talk about the differences between Emma Russell and George Wallen Park. Some of the pros for Emma Russell Park is it's already allocated green space. Other pros for Emma Russell Park is you're talking about 4 courts instead of 8. Some of the cons there, it's a little discombobulated. Like when you see what an 8-court complex looks like at other places, ours would be a little bit disjointed at Emma Russell. And it lacks a little bit of spread out through the cityness, for lack of a better term. Some of the pros at George Wallen Park are it's more spread out. We have it in different locations. 8 of them would be built the correct way where it wouldn't be discombobulated. It's probably a better location if we got into the tournament and an animal of things. It's right off of Main Street and things like that. Some of the negatives, it's loss of green space. You know, we use a lot of green space for programming. It's currently where we hold a lot of football practices. Roy High comes over to do some lacrosse stuff over in that area. Other cons of George Wallen opposed to Emma Russell is it's 8-4. You know, we talked about that as a pro for Emma Russell, so therefore it's got to be almost a con at George Wallen. This is a fascinating one because there's merit in both places. There really is, and I think both places work. I think both places we can provide something to the community. You know, like I've said in previous meetings, pickleball is not always an easy sell for the ramp committee, but we think with, you know, the high demand we have, we have an opportunity here. So I'll turn the time over to you guys if you have any questions. I know some of you have thought about it a little bit of what location you would like to see us explore. But I'll turn the time over to you guys with any questions that you may have.
Let me see if I answer the question. Really what it comes down to, unless you can tell me something different, Travis, it really comes down to this. Are we going to basically treat these pickleball courts in some fashion of a tournament, which means it has to be sponsored by the city for the most part? I mean, you have to arrange that and manage that. Or it comes down to basically providing these kinds of recreational opportunities, diversifying through the city. So the ones on the northeast side have access and the ones on the southwest side have access. Is that how you see it really comes down to?
That's a fair argument. You know, and I want it to be known about tournaments. Tournaments are not going to generate direct income for us. I mean, it's very minuscule is what I'm saying. You know, $1,500, $2,000. Not saying that we'll make anything we can make, but where you see the benefits of tournaments is they buy gas at your gas station. They go to McDonald's. They, you know, that they use your town services and things like that. But the last thing I would want this group to think is we're going to run tournaments all the time and make all this money and we're going to pay for these pickleball courts in 2 years, because it's just not true.
So what about the
Great
new
comment.
2.5 mile park? Maybe we could put pickleball courts all the way down there.
Well played.
So is there one place easier to put the pickleball court, you know, than?
You know, I don't know about easier. Aesthetically, obviously George Wallen, but you lose the green space.
And what green space, where would you actually put it?
You know, as staff, we've talked about it. I would leave that up to you guys a little bit, but it logically makes sense to me right by the tennis courts. You have restrooms there. It's right next to the parking lot. That's the most logical place. There's kind of the east end of the park up by the America First area. You don't have as good a parking there. We kind of have an agreement with them of times that we can park there.
Right.
And it's like after 5 p.m. and on the weekend, so you lose your day stuff. And you're not as close to restrooms there.
Oh, I think the part, if the decision is to put it there, I think the location he's saying is by far the best.
Yeah.
Because
I
it does
like the
give them.
George Wallen area. I want something different up there besides just tennis. And like you said, it's right off the main road, you know, and.
Well, and you have the splash pad there too in the summers. So
Well,
it's
and if you did have a
yeah.
tournament, it's not like it's far. I mean, my granddaughters played softball tournaments where we traveled miles from park to park. And that's just, you know, right up the road, easy to find, and I would like.
And like I've been very upfront, I want you guys to have a voice in this. I want you to say where you would like them to be. And if the idea is for us to submit a ramp grant for 8 pickleballs at George Wallen Park, glad to do it.
Well, and the other key would be is that the date that has to be submitted is 12th January.
Right.
So it's not like we can wait for another meeting. I mean, the bottom line is.
No, it is.
now.
It's actually the 14th, Mayor,
Is
to
it
be clear.
14th?
But yeah, it's wake up tomorrow morning. We have 10 days to put it together.
Yeah.
Would you,
We've been working on it, you know, because we've had an idea of pickleballs in the direction, but yeah, we have to have an answer tonight.
So let me ask you something. Say we submit it for one or the other, and the sun and the moon and the stars line up, and we decide we wanted to move it somewhere else. Are they going to be that technical to where it would give us a little more time?
I could, if you said tonight we're going to put them at George Wallen Park, and I submitted a ramp grant for that, and then came back to me a couple months later and said we want to move it to Emma Russell, I can't say for sure what their response would be. In fairness, I don't know. They might be like, great, you still got pickleball courts in Roy, or they might say, the scope of this project's now changed. I don't know for sure, so I don't
I just wanted
want
to
to
get
tell
your
you something
feeling.
that I'm not accurate with.
What about, we had talked about 2 proposals at one point in time, doing the first and then prioritizing them. The first being the 8 at George Wallen and then 4 for Emma Russell, because, you know, maybe they say, well, we don't want to give that much money for pickleball courts for 8, but maybe they would do 4 at another place, or is that too much work, or how does that work?
In full disclosure, for the most part, and I told you this last time, and I talked about the ranges of cost and how it's all graded depending on the cost of the project. What we would submit would be pretty similar, you know, frankly speaking. We would work with Wasatch Civil and some of our engineer groups, and they would get us costs. My guess is the costs they're going to give us are going to be the same whether they're at George Wallen or Emma Russell. So I don't know that it's necessarily going to be hugely more difficult to do what you're asking, to say priority 1 is this and this is priority 2. And you might be right. They might say, we don't want to do priority 1, but we'll do priority 2. They might say that. I can't say one way or the
But
other.
our
though.
biggest risk would be is they could come in, Diane, and basically say, you're asking for 2 different ramps. And we'll give you one, but we won't give you the other.
Correct.
Yeah,
And the truth of the matter is, I think you would have to tell them, if I got this one, I don't want the other one, or because
The other hard part
financially
would
we
be is
can't
why
afford
would
it.
Right, that was
the
my
city
next
want to
question
support
about-
both?
Right.
Just
Yeah.
support them both. If your position's going to be I want pickleball courts, then submit one ramp grant and simply says I want them here, and that's how it'll be. If the option is that they can change it in 3 months to something else, I think that's good, but there's a risk. I would just suggest to you is there's a separate committee that defines those and decides those. And if you create too much confusion in that, and they start to say, well, gee, I mean, the best way I would do it, if they only want 4 here and they're asking for 8 here, I'll give them the 4 because they can spend the rest of that money somewhere else. Because they want to spread that
Well,
rent money to
and I'm going to
everybody.
back up because I've caught myself where I need to correct a statement. Last time I told you ramp funds, you need to be first in. So if we submit for a ramp grant, if we submit for 2 of them in theory, we need to be able to say financially we are backing up both of those grants.
So that was the understanding from our last meeting. And council, let me just make that clear. The council has to have the one that makes obligation of funding. We've caught Travis in a tough spot before. He went out there based on conversation. He put in a ramp to basically put a skating rink out back. He went out there and got this county ramp to basically pay for half of it. It was a sizable amount of money. And the city council at the time, and I was there, basically said no. The embarrassment would be is he had to turn that ramp money back to the county because what happened was the council did not support it going in. Before we leave tonight, if you want pickleball courts, I'm asking you to make a commitment for the record where you want them. So if he goes and puts a ramp request in and he gets that half of that money from the county, then there has to be an obligation from this council that you'll give him the rest of it.
Do we have an estimated on cost yet, or that's the next portion?
We would anticipate an 8-court pickleball project to be about a little shy of $300,000. Our share of it being close to $150,000. I would say just a skosh more than half of that if you did 4, because you do save a little bit of money based on volume of 8 opposed to 4. So, you know, if you said we were going to do 4, I would, you know, depending on grading things, say 80.
Well, I know that we've bounced the tournament thing back and forth, but isn't 8 what's preferred to be a tournament?
I think 8 at some point is critical, whether that's 8 at George Wallen or.
So when you're talking 8, are you talking 8 at George Wallen?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
That makes
Get
no
it done.
sense, yeah.
My biggest thing is I want 8 at one place or the other. I don't care where it's at.
If we did pickleball court, if we submitted for a ramp grant for pickleball courts at George Wallen Park, it would be 8 pickleball courts.
Get it done.
So with that announcement, Ann, where do you want it?
George Wallen.
Sophie?
George Wallen.
I agree.
George Wallen.
Okay,
Get it done.
we all agree.
Yeah.
Okay, put that in your package.
Thank you.
Way to make it
Okay.
easy. That was the easiest decision we made all night.
That was a 3 meeting to get to that decision. Okay, for the record, it goes to George Wallen.
Unfortunately, nobody wanted to stay around and listen to you talk.
Nah, no, they don't.
I feel bad.
Well, person.
I shouldn't say nobody. We got
And
we've got the faithful in the audience.
Right.
Okay, city manager report, Matt?
Just one thing for tonight. We're gonna have a lot of fun together as staff and as council and with the mayor. There's gonna be
I
a lot
didn't
of
vote to increase the fund budget. Sorry. It's
It's gonna be
potluck.
there's gonna
It's
be a lot
potluck.
of work. And there's gonna be a lot of work involved in this, and the next big thing that we have is the planning commission just finished up, the general plan. We would like you to go in when you're available to talk to Steve Parkinson in planning and pick up a packet of the general plan and start reviewing that. I anticipate work sessions, I anticipate city council meetings, going over this general plan. It's a big document. Please take your time on it, give your suggestions, and get ready to work. So that's all I have for tonight.
Okay, and that's a big one. Council, the current total general plan was actually created back in 2002. It still calls out in our general plan, we're going to bring a train station to Roy. It is completely outdated, and to be very honest with you, it's absolutely useless. And so this move that we're moving right now is to fix all of that and give us a good plan to march to the future. Council, any comments, questions before we ask for an adjournment?
I was just going to say one thing. I know you're going to hurry and adjourn, Joe, but I was talking
You know
to
me
Matt
too
because I
well.
had an interested party who was interested in that property from 1900 to 2200 because of all the deepness of that property with those housing.
Right.
Wanted to come in and buy that, but that has to be green space. I thought when I talked to Matt that maybe the city has the option to maybe buy it, or is it going to be green space?
Well, let's
all
make sure
just
we understand. Are we
depends,
talking about the Hanson property? What are you
No,
talking about?
on
5600.
5600
So
from
depending
1900
on
to
56,
2200.
Yeah.
To
So depending on
2200.
how deep
Yes.
those lots are is dependent on if UDOT is going to give it to
Right.
Roy City or sell it off to
Right.
the private market. Typically, we would have one of the first rights to buy that property.
That's correct.
Hey, what if we put some food truck pads out there?
Well, there's an interested party that's interested in buying that and putting in some townhomes or condos or something like that because of the, how deep those properties are.
Yeah, here's what I think I understand, Matt, help me because we've been working this with UDOT. They're going to take, first thing is in the plan, they have to put in an active transportation corridor, so the trail will be there. If there is in fact depth to those properties and it meets our setback requirements, which means from 5600 setback and then the back end sets back within the requirements and there's enough room to put something in there and most of those will not, then they will sell that property. We won't even see it.
I've actually had 3 residents that their property backs up to that,
Mm-hmm.
reach out and say, can we buy a portion of that to deepen their lots? So that might be an option.
Well, and that's the question we have to ask. UDOT could basically, while they're in that discussion, take that. Either the city gets it or UDOT, it's all owned by UDOT, so UDOT may come in there and basically says, yeah, if you want to basically take 200 square feet, 10 feet wide, they may just basically sell it to them. But the secret's going to be is what does Roy City want to do? Because it really comes down to us. We'll have first right of refusal on that UDOT property. What do we, well, I can't back that up. The property owner has first rights, but Roy has, in essence, second rights. And according to UDOT, that property that cannot be sold for anything else will be given to Roy. And personally, Travis, my concern is going to be because it's going to have a trail in it, it's going to have a walking, it's going to have all that, it's already in the plan. You're the organization that has to manage it and maintain it. And 2.5 miles is a lot of park.
Yeah, well, this company only is interested in from 1900 to 2200 because those are the deepest lots. And then from 2200 all the way down over the viaduct can be green space, Travis.
Well, it could be. The secret's going to be is that there's one component in there we've got to work, and I won't get a lot of detail about it, but Golden West doesn't want to move. And we are got to fix that.
I think there's a way to make that work. We've
Yeah,
talked
can't they
about
just-
it, but.
The houses south of them can
Can't.
be their parking lot?
Can't.
No?
Roy City, we've asked that, we can't. So what it comes down to is, if Golden West wants to make an offer on that house that's south of that and put a parking lot in it, they have to do that.
Well, yeah, they would have to do
Yeah,
that.
They would
we-
have to do it, but even
Right.
if they could work with UDOT to buy part of the west property to where they could make a swing wide.
Good. The secret is, let's not make any confusion,
Yeah.
it's not zoned for that.
Yeah.
So it's not just going up there and says buying it. Council, you'll have to go through the planning commission, we'll have to decide whether or not we want to rezone that, which makes sense, but just recognize is that it's not really that easy. And by the way, if you you make that commercial, that property value just jumped up significantly. So just recognize that. So today they could buy it, but if they wait until, and I would say wait, if the property owner says, I'll wait until Roy City changes the commercial, then I'll sell it, they're sure in heck gonna get a whole lot more money out of that property than they would otherwise. But
There's no doubt we have a lot of work.
Right.
these are the issues, we're working it. Okay, before Joe basically twists my arm, do I have a motion then to adjourn?
So moved.
I'll second it.
Okay, we have a first and we have a second, all in favor of adjournment?
Aye.
Any opposed? That's not, thank you, a great meeting, we got a lot accomplished tonight, thank you.
Maybe I can sleep tonight.